Hey everybody, Adam Volk here again for the Social School, and we are here in covering module number 3 for our search engine optimization course. So thanks so much for sticking with me and blasting through module number 1 and number 2. I know module number 2 is very technical. Again, that's as technical as the course is going to get for that foundational work, but so important. And now we're going to talk a little bit about module 3. So what can we expect in this course? So for this particular module, we are going to chat about sort of the meat and potatoes of SEO and what most people think of when it comes to search engine optimization. Content and keywords. So we're going to first chat a little bit about how Google understands website content. We're going to chat about the basics of doing keyword research, which is one of the most important skills that a SEO specialist can learn or even can really help your business. And we're going to chat a little bit about the key components of on-page SEO and also how to create an effective keyword map. So let's jump right into things. All right. How does Google view content? So this is something that's really changed a lot over the years. But essentially what we're seeing is that Google's machine learning, which we chatted about before, it's called RankBrain, is becoming increasingly sophisticated. In the old days, and by old days I mean even 5 years ago, which is insane considering how fast things have moved, Google really just looked for certain keywords. You would literally put keywords on your site that you would want Google to try to rank for. And Google would take you at your word. And then it would look for certain things like synonyms or other kind of terms. And it's very basic. But now AI is taking over and it's very sophisticated. So Google can understand semantic relationships now. It can understand content at a deep level, not just words, but it can understand topics and ideas. So for example, if you had a blog article about boxing, it's going to understand that punching and Muhammad Ali are essentially closely related to boxing. This is all part of a content piece, and it's all part of a topic. This is not something Google could do in the old days, because if you think about that, that actually requires some thought. It requires some logic. It requires human insight to be able to make that connection. And Google is able to do that. So for example, here with this screen grab, we see here that if somebody were to search, say, apex predator, they might see top of the food chain show up, because Google understands that the top of the food chain is semantically related to apex predators. So that is something that just would not have been possible, and we kind of take it for granted that we're able to understand this content, and we're able to understand at a really deep level about topics and content, but Google is now able to do this at a very shocking degree of accuracy, which is incredible, just the advances that we're seeing with AI. And AI is essentially in its infancy. It's not even really as sophisticated as like a baby. It's just really the baby of what this platform is actually going to end up becoming, and it's changing so quickly. So both very interesting and powerful, and a little bit scary at the same time. But for us, in terms of content, we can really trust Google a little bit to be able to understand content at a really deep and rich level. So, we chatted a little bit earlier about this before, but when it comes to content, Google doesn't just look at one page in isolation. This is a common mistake that a lot of people make when they're thinking of SEO, is that they're just trying to optimize one page and call it a day. But Google actually looks at multiple pages, and this is how it determines if a site is an authoritative source when it comes to that topic or industry or piece of information. So for example, if you have a site with 50 articles on boxing, Google's going to say, hey, that's a lot of boxing content. This must be an authoritative source for this. That's going to be a lot more authoritative when it comes to boxing than a gardening page or a gardening site that has a single page about boxing. Google's going to say, well, you're not really that authoritative. You seem mostly to be about gardening. So no matter how well optimized that page is, it's still not going to rank particularly well as an authoritative piece of content compared to sites that are dedicated to boxing. So really important to think about that. We really want to think about our sites as being authoritative sources for content and focused around key areas rather than trying to be all things to everyone, because Google's going to look at all of our content together as a big block. So how do we get Google to care about our content? So the golden rule of SEO, write for users, not search engines. This is one of the most important rules of SEO. And again, bear in mind that Google is an idiot savant. It can do all sorts of crazy calculations and mathematical things, but but it cannot really do really basic things sometimes. So we don't want to write for search engines. We want to write for users. And almost all of the time that means that content wins out when it comes to SEO. So a well-optimized page that is terribly written, that page, no matter how technically perfect it is from an SEO, it's got canonicals, it's got an XML sitemap that has that page on it, all that crazy stuff we talked about in Module 2. It's done all that, but the page is a piece of crap in terms of content. It's full of typos, it's weirdly written. That page is never going to outrank a page that is beautifully written but has not had a single SEO thing done to it. That's just the way it works. Content always wins out. But if you really want to kick ass when it comes to the search results and you want your page to rank well, the best way to do that is to do both. Write an amazing piece of content and then optimize the hell out of it. That is how you get to that first position on Google, and more importantly, that's how you get users to go to your site and take action, to buy your product, to take advantage of your service, to engage with you. That is how you do it. Both those things, great content and SEO tactics that we've chatted about. So best practices for SEO content. And some of this might be kind of familiar to you, but it's still really important to kind of take a step back and think about this. So one of the best things you can do is to showcase what Google and a lot of SEOs refer to as EAT. This stands for expertise, authority, and trust. So how do you show your expertise? Well, around a particular piece of content or topic, you talk about all the experience you have doing it. You're an expert in this. You have an official title around this. You've been doing this for such and such a long time. You make it clear that the person producing this piece of content is an expert in that. You link off to other sites that have a valuable content that's related to that. So you're just showing that you're an expert in this field. Authority as well. You have multiple pieces of content around this piece of information. So you're really showing Google that, yes, I'm not just doing a one-off article. I'm writing a number of articles about this. This is something I live, sleep, eat, and breathe on a daily basis. And then trust. That could be something even as simple as having a review on your site that is, or somebody has some testimonial and you're showing that you're very trustworthy. But it's also coming from things like when you think about links to that, you're getting a lot of links to your page, and that it's just another way to kind of reinforce that you are a trusted source of information. And you can read a whole bunch more information on EAT if you want. There's tons of articles written about this, but this is a great way to rank for SEO content, and it's something that SEO content specialists spend a lot of time thinking about and finding ways to optimize for. And then writing longer. So this one can be challenging, but in general, 1,000 to 2,000 word pages tend to rank better. Google's done a number of studies, and there's been a whole bunch of third-party sources on SEO that have done studies, and they found that for almost any given topic, especially more complex topics or industries, 1,000 to 2,000 word articles are almost always in the top 100 positions on Google, and they dominate those first results. And that's just because if you think about a page, it's almost like a newspaper article. If you're going to cover a topic, you're probably going to write more than a paragraph about it. Your page should have a bunch of information. Now, there are exceptions that prove that rule. Sometimes there are pages that have very little content on it that do rank well, but those are few and far between. In general, longer pieces of content. Now, if you get pushback on this too, what a lot of designers in particular, sometimes UX people, developers will think, hey, why do we have this much content? This is a lot of content. Bear in mind, that doesn't necessarily mean that when people engage with content, and think about your own way of reading articles or reading web pages, we don't necessarily read everything like we would a book from start to finish and we go to the top of the page. We've become increasingly trained to be scanners. So we tend to scan longer pieces of content, look, oh, there's some headers, there's some bullet points, there's some cool, oh, this looks like a cool section, I'm going to read this, maybe I'll scroll down. A lot of people interact with content that way, which is why longer pieces of content tend to do so well. So bear in mind that if you do get some pushback and you're somebody saying, holy shit, that's a lot of words to write, just think about, well, this is designed for scanners too. It's a longer piece of content, but we want to say a lot about it and we want to cover all of our bases, and somebody's going to find what they need from this particular article. Maybe somebody will read it from start to finish, but we also want to think about those people who are scanning articles and going through it. So write longer if you can. And then think about links. And by that I mean, where's this piece of content going to live so that Google and users can find it. Again, we chatted about this before, that Google is essentially nothing but a series of links. That's how it creates our search results. So we really want to think about where this piece of content is going to live. And this has happened to me a whole bunch of times. I've done keyword research, I've optimized a piece of content, and blah, 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 and it's got the page title, it's got all this great stuff, and then it's just like, where are we going to put this page? Is it going to be linked from the navigation? Is it in the footer? Is there a subpage? So just think about that. If you're going to spend all this time writing this content, how are users and Google going to get to this page as easily as possible? And then just think about addressing a specific user need. If you can do this beyond anything else, that's all things to everyone and it covers every topic, the topic from every angle, why not just take a step back and think about it more from one specific user need? Do they want a piece of information? Are they trying to find something? Are they trying to make a purchase? What is that particular user trying to do, and what can this piece of content do for them? So that could be a great way to, instead of writing one massive piece of article, again, it's great to be longer, but if you can, write long articles that are kind of approaching the same topic from different ways, just to try to address that specific user question or user need. If you can do that, and that last one is so important, you can honestly rank so well on Google by addressing those specific needs. Because we turn to Google, think about how many times a day you use it to ask a question, find a location, make a purchase, sign up for something. You're using it for those kinds of things. So if you have a piece of content that can address that type of user need or question or search, then you are going to really kick ass when it comes to ranking for that content. All right. So we could just write our amazing piece of content. We could write our page or our blog or whatever it is we're writing, and then just hope that Google finds this page and it gets discovered and it ranks, and all of a sudden we get 1 million people visiting our site from Google search results. We could do that. But a better solution is to try to make it easy for Google to understand it. Remember, Google's an idiot savant. It's capable of doing AI and understanding content contextually, but at the same time, if we can make things as easy as possible, if we can spell it out to Google what we want, we are going to get such better results. And that's where keywords come in. So keywords. This is what most people think of SEO, but as we've kind of seen from doing this course, there's a whole lot more to it than that. But really, this is what most people think of as the meat and potatoes. And it is to a certain degree, which we'll kind of chat a little bit about. So, keywords are the building blocks of SEO. So we know that Google's getting better at understanding our content thanks to AI, but at its core, the Google algorithm still looks at keywords. So we think of links as being the bones and kind of structure of the SERP. Keywords are the DNA that's underneath that really helps ensure that Google's getting a good sense of what our content and website is all about. But keywords are very, very tricky things because we can't just take the same keyword and repeat it over and over again. So we can't just say, hey, check out Adam's Shoe Store. We've got the best men's shoes and shoes for men and male shoes and shoe fashion for men with men's shoes. Did we mention we have men's shoes? That's just keyword stuffing. And again, we want to write for users, not search engines. And Google's just going to ignore that crap. It's not going to end up ranking it anyways. So we want to create value for users. So we have to be very, very strategic about how we use our keywords. And we have to consider the types of keywords that our users are going to search. Because again, we don't really necessarily care about just focusing entirely on some of the metrics that we're going to look at, like search volume or how many people. We want to really put ourselves in the user's shoes and think about keywords that they would actually be looking for to drive to our site. Because Google rewards sites that put users first. In fact, you could say that's what Google's entire business model is built on. It's built on putting a user request and providing valid, useful information that meets a specific search result. So if we can do that through keywords, Google's going to reward us as well. So when it comes to keywords, there's really two ways we can think about them. We can think of them as either head keywords or long tail keywords. Now, head keywords are what most people, when they first start doing keyword research, they tend to just focus on these and then that's all they really care about. So a head keyword is a single word or phrase, something very broad like fashion. These tend to be very, very, very open. This could trigger a whole range of different things that are going to be very difficult to rank for. And interestingly, these make up about 30% of all searches. So these are what people tend to go for when they're first doing keyword research and just trying to figure out how this system works. But these aren't really the best keywords to go after. Instead, the better keywords to start thinking about are long tail keywords. So this is how most people do searches. Most people don't search fashion. They do longer searches like where to buy a new men's custom suit in Calgary. That's a very long search. This is actually about 70% of all searches. And think about how you search for something. Do you search fashion? Or are you searching for new women's dress, summer floral patterns, silk patterns, or some weird long tail search that's very much more specific and is sort of almost like a stream of consciousness? That's how people end up searching. That's how most people do searches for things. So even though this keyword is going to look amazing, fashion probably has 5 million searches a month, it's so broad it could mean anything. We don't really know what someone who's searching fashion could be looking for. Are they looking for fashion design, the magazine? Are they looking for a field of study? Are they looking for clothing? Are they looking for designers? That's a whole range of things. So if we think more from a long tail standpoint, this is how we connect with users. This is how really people are using search engines. So very important to remember that users search from a long tail standpoint. So how do we find the right keyword? This is one of the hardest things to do when it comes to SEO. And there is no right answer. There's no tool that's going to sell you, this is the perfect keyword for you to use. Use this one and it's going to be amazing. It just doesn't work like that. Keyword research is probably more art than science. So there's a bit of data analysis to it. There's a bit of looking at the numbers, kind of mulling it over. But at the end of the day, just as much of it is going to be you sort of trying to figure out what you think is the best and just kind of weighing all the odds and thinking about your brand and thinking about the content and trying to choose keywords that way. So again, not an exact science, more of an art, but there's in general 3 things that we're going to look for. And we're going to talk more about what each of these are, but in general, these 3 things are relevance, search volume, and competition. So if we start with relevance, this is the most important factor in determining your keyword. Way more important than any of the other 2 that we're going to talk about. Relevance is the be-all and end-all of keyword research. So if it wasn't, everybody would be trying to rank for Beyonce and Star Wars and all these kind of high volume search terms, no matter what their page is about. But that's not going to work because we can't rank for Beyonce unless our site is about Beyonce or we're Beyonce herself. So we have to be relevant to what people are actually searching for. So the first step to kind of think about is put yourself in the user's shoes and ask, what would someone search for to get to this page? And just as kind of an anecdote, years ago when I was first learning about SEO, I was like, what is this stuff? It looks super confusing. How would somebody possibly do this? I worked with an SEO specialist and I said, how do you actually go about finding keywords? And I thought she would say, oh, there's some magic machine that I use and some tool and it spits out all these computations and run these numbers. She was like, I first start by getting a pencil, get a piece of paper, and I write down a bunch of words that I think somebody might search to get to my site. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that's not the answer I thought that you were going to say. But that is really as basic as it is. You're going to take those keywords and kind of look at them from a number standpoint, but that's the first step. Just thinking, what is someone going to search to get to my page? And is this going to be, is it a relevant search that's going to try to trigger this content? Next, after relevance, and again, this is much less important, and it's so easy to get caught up in the numbers on this, but we do want to look at search volume. So how many people actually search for this keyword? Very, very easy to get lost in the numbers, but it's more important for us to be relevant. So just as kind of a way to think about this, I would ask yourself, okay, this keyword has 1 million searches, but no one's going to convert from it. Is that a good keyword, or is it better to have a keyword that has 1,000 searches, but probably 100 people would convert from it? So it's so easy to get, and I almost call this search volume blindness on, where you just see, oh my God, this keyword's got 1 billion searches, it's amazing. But is that actually a relevant term? Because if it isn't, don't bother going after it. It's better to go after terms that are relevant. So we kind of use this search volume with a grain of salt. These are rough estimates too that Google and other tools use. So when you're doing research on any keyword tool, including Google's own tools, and it says this keyword has 10,000 searches a month, That is not an exact number and will never be an exact number. So these are rough estimates that Google and other search tools bucket them into. So take those numbers with a very big grain of salt and use this more as sort of a barometer to help you kind of gut check your keyword, not as an exact numerical fact. The other thing you want to think about is competition. So everybody wants to rank for keywords, but it is so competitive. And some keywords are definitely going to be way more competitive than others. So some of the big industries that have incredibly insane competition rates tend to be credit cards, insurance, health, also brand names. No matter what you do, you would just never rank for some of these terms. So like I could pick every trick I know in the book and everything I know how to do and try to rank for Nike shoes. It's just never going to happen. I will never rank for Nike shoes unless I, go out of my way to spend, whatever, all aspects of my life trying to do that. And even then, it's probably never going to happen. So some keywords are just going to be impossible to rank for no matter what you do, especially if you're a small brand, you're a local brand, and you're trying to go after these huge keywords that have 1 million searches a month, but they're so competitive, they're nationally searched terms. It's just impossible. So you do have to think about that competition level. And in some keyword tools, including the one we're going to look at today, though the metric that's actually pulled for this is called keyword difficulty. And it's actually going to tell you how, as a percentage, how difficult a term is to look at. So how do you actually do keyword research? There are a ton of these tools out there. 3 of the best paid solutions, and this is just my own personal opinion, you can probably hear other people recommend other things, but 3 of the best paid solutions are the Google Keyword Planner, Moz, and SEMrush, and I've included links here. Planner from Google, just as a note, is technically a free tool. It's available in Google Ads, so if you're running paid search, you can have access to the Google Keyword Planner tool. And even if you're not running an ad campaign, you can still access this tool. But the caveat is that unless you are running a paid search campaign where you're actually spending a budget, you will only get rough estimates of numbers. You're never going to get specific numeric data. So it's just going to give you a range. If you aren't running any ads, it'll say, oh, this keyword has between 100 to 10,000 searches a month. So very, very broad, not particularly useful. So you can really only take advantage of the Google Keyword Planner if you're running ads. So that's why I'm classifying this as a paid solution. And the other 2 are very, very good tools, probably best in class when it comes to keyword research and something that any SEO is going to have some experience with. But there are also some free options out there. And I've included links to each of these. So there's Google Trends. This isn't going to give you search data, but it will show you some trends which you can isolate to specific countries and times of the year. And you can just see what are people looking for at certain times of the year or over the last couple of years. And you can get some more information around keywords. It'll also break out things by rising keywords in terms of new popularity around certain terms and topics. So very useful. Suvl is also another really cool tool that you can use. It's going to show you all sorts of different platforms, and LSI Graph is another really cool tool. LSI stands for Latency Semantic Indexing, which is just a fancy way of saying how Google understands related keywords from one another, and that's exactly what this tool does. If you enter in a keyword, it's going to show you what it thinks are related terms around that topic. So it can be kind of a good way to show what's actually occurring and how Google and other search engines are likely to think about topics and related topics to one another. Another really great tool, and if you're looking for a great free tool, I would strongly recommend Ubersuggest. This is a tool that is currently owned by Neil Patel, who is also a great SEO and digital marketing authority, if you like. So he's great, and you can check out Ubersuggest. It's a pretty cool tool that will give you some search volumes, and it's free to use. Also, you can check out Answer the Public. This shows you some common questions that people are asking. It does a really cool visual way of breaking out the different search results and kind of showing you different topics and ideas around something. And so you can use that as a way to try to get some really strong results that way. And I would also recommend something called Keyword Shitter, which has a really crass name, but is a really cool tool as well that's also going to use latency semantic indexing and going to show you a ton of different information around specific keywords. So these are all some free options. There's a ton of other ones out there, but you might want to give these a shot. So I'm just going to show you as an example here from the SEMrush keyword tool. You can purchase a version of this tool, so it is paid, or you can try the free version, which just limits you to 10 searches a day. So if you want to, you can just Google SEMrush and give this tool, the free version of it, a try. And what you're going to do here is you're just going to enter your search term up in the top bar. You're going to select your country from the drop-down option, and then you're going to search, see the monthly search volume around that. So I can see if I typed in men's shoes, I selected Canada as the country, I can see all of the different search volumes around that particular result here. Also within SEMrush, if I were to click on the keyword difficulty tab, I can move over and it'll actually show me the percentage of how difficult that term is to rank. So we can see here that men's shoes has a difficulty of 80%, and anything over 70% is going to be extremely hard to rank for. And also, if we're thinking about our keywords, remember that we really want to go after more of those long tail keywords that might have less search volume but are going to be easier to rank for and more relevant to what people are searching for. Men's shoes is probably more of a head term that's very broad and very, very difficult to rank for. But this just kind of shows you how you can use the SEMrush tool to understand keyword difficulty. And I would strongly recommend you give this tool a try and kind of try out the free version. You can also use this really, really cool feature in SEMrush called the Keyword Magic tool. And this is actually going to break it out, your particular term, into different categories and show you all of the combined search volumes around that. So you'll see here, if I typed in men's shoes and use the Keyword Magic tool, it's all going to show me all these different topics around run, size, Nike, dress, Adidas, best, casual, leather, and it's going to show me all of the different keywords under those topics. So I can kind of get a sense for what's being discussed around a specific topic. And this is what I was talking about earlier about breaking up a piece of content. Instead of trying to write an article that's just all about men's shoes, maybe I'm going to shoes and black dress shoes, and another one that's talking about the best types of casual shoes that are available. I can kind of break it out by those topics that I'm seeing there. You'll also note that there is and I've highlighted here a little section called questions, so you can either see all results or you can search for questions. More and more users understand that Google answers their questions directly, so they tend to do searches for those, and it's going to show you search volume around a specific question. You'll also note here, I haven't highlighted it, but you can see that for particular searches, it's going to show us the volume, so the number of average searches. In this case, I'm looking at US searches. But it's going to show me the average volumes for that, and KD is keyword difficulty. So it's going to show me how difficult it would be to rank for a particular term. So this is why SEMrush is one of the most powerful and best-in-class keyword research tools, and a very, very cool tool in addition to this. It does a ton of other stuff. Not being paid by SEMrush to say this, but it's definitely worth the investment and not particularly expensive as far as monthly costs go. So definitely worth checking out, and I would strongly recommend you give the free version of this a try. So let's do our first exercise here and kind of put some of this theory into practice. So using either SEMrush, the free trial version, or you can use Ubersuggest, which is also free. Just to think about 10 to 20 keywords that are valuable to your business. So don't necessarily worry about your brand, because in all likelihood you're ranking for your brand already, or at least you should be. But if you're a new organization or a new company, it might be a bit more difficult to rank for your brand. But in general, you should be able to rank for that. So let's not think about brand. Let's go after more of those general industry terms, those competitive terms. And remember to search by relevance, volume, and competition, with relevance being the most important thing. And also bearing in mind that you might want to go after those long tail terms too. Don't just go after men's shoes. Think more about what are they specifically looking for with men's shoes that I could potentially offer to them. And then what you're going to do is just identify the search volume around that, the difficulty, and then maybe just have a note here to yourself about or if you ever have to kind of present this to somebody, what your rationale for choosing that particular keyword is, why you think this is a good one. And I often do that as well when I do keyword research, just because sometimes you get called on that. They say, hey, well, why'd you choose this? And you say, well, this reason, this topic, I'm seeing this one's more competitive, we could create this piece of content around that. It can be really helpful to do that. So let's just take a few minutes now and go ahead and do some keyword research. And again, this is more of an art than a science, but it's something that is a great skill to have and requires a bit of practice. So let's take a few minutes to do that, and then we will continue on with the rest of the module. All right, next I want to talk a little bit about on-page SEO. This might be something you're familiar with already if you've heard of SEO, but that's totally cool if you haven't. We're going to chat a little bit more about what this looks like. So, setting aside all of our technical stuff that we've talked about in Module 2, the more challenging kind of things to wrap our head around for a lot of us, myself included, that is definitely technical SEO can be the most confusing and challenging even for me to do that, and I do this for a living. But now that we know a little bit more about content, and we've done some keyword research, we've got our keywords, what do we do with these? Now, how do we use these keywords? So remember, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'm going to keep saying it, Google is an idiot savant. We can help it by understanding our page by using keywords in a very smart and strategic way. So how do we do that? Think about the golden rule of keywords. Remember this, if you remember nothing else from this course, when it comes to on-page SEO. You want to use one primary keyword per page, and then add multiple secondary keywords where possible to help reinforce, that you're an authority on a particular topic to Google. So we're going to talk about how to use that primary keyword. So we're going to pick one keyword to rule them all, and we're going to add that keyword to a number of different on-page elements. And I've ranked out these on-page elements in order of importance. We're going to chat about what each of these looks like. So we're going to do the page title, the meta description, the H1, our URL, alt tags, image file names, and the body copy. And if we can add our primary keyword to these elements, we can help our content rank very, very well. So the first thing we're going to think about is page title. This is the most important signal to Google for SEO by far and away. If you do nothing else on your site, if you update your page title and your meta description, which is what we'll talk about next after this one, if you do nothing else, if you just update those two, you try to find a primary keyword, you optimize it towards those, you're going to be 1,000 times better off than you are just not doing anything to a particular page. In fact, Google has had a number of Ask Me Anythings with John Mueller, who is their head of search, and somebody once asked, what can I do if I only have a limited amount of time? What's the most bang for my buck I can get from SEO to help with rankings on Google? And he said, update the page title and meta description. That's the best thing you can do. So this is a hugely, hugely, hugely important ranking signal to Google. So you want to use your keyword in your page title. And that shows up, you'll see, in the primary tab of your browser, but it's also going to show up in the SERP itself. That's where it's pulling in that page title. And you want to keep your page title to no more than 60 characters in length. That includes spaces. And remember that your brand is often included in a pipe afterwards. So you might see your page name and then a break with your brand after it. So bear that in mind when you're calculating those 60 characters, that character limit. If you go over that limit, your page title might not show up in the search results. It might get cut off. And users are just a little suspicious of a page title that's being truncated. It'll appear with like 3 little dots, an ellipsis after that. And bear in mind that it's going to appear in the search results page. And you should also have one unique page title for every page. Don't use the same page title across multiple pages. Remember, Google hates duplicate content. So if you do that, you could potentially get that page penalized and all the pages that are using the same one. So here we can see the social schools page title being used both in the SERP and on page itself. Next is the meta description. So this is basically a little description or ad for what your, it's almost like an advertisement, although it's not paid search, but it's almost like a little promotional thing about what your page is about. A meta description only appears on the SERP. It's not appearing anywhere else. It should be under 150 characters or no more than 150 characters, including spaces. You should add your primary keyword within the meta description, and it should end with a strong call to action. So like register now, learn more, all those good things. So you really want to make sure that you have a well-written description, meta description here. Now, technically, these don't provide any actual SEO value. Google doesn't count this towards a ranking factor as far as their algorithm goes, but it's been verified that meta descriptions that are well written and have a great description and a strong call to action have higher click-through rates, which is considered valuable to Google. So that's why these are considered an SEO best practice. And really, if you don't have this on a page, what Google's going to try to do is crawl your page and add something itself. So if you do a search for anything, you might see this. You might see some that are well-written meta descriptions that take up the space perfectly, and then you're going to see others that are really weirdly worded, and then they just kind of trail off and are cut off. That's because nobody provided a meta description for that page. So Google's trying to guess and try to pull relevant content that it thinks is going to match that search result from your page. We don't want that to happen. We want to have control over what the meta description is and what appears. So we have to provide these to Google. And again, you want to have a unique meta description for each page. Don't use the same meta description across multiple pages. If you do, that will be flagged as duplicate content by Google, and that's a big no-no that we don't want. Right. The next thing we want to think about is our H1, or headline 1. So this is very similar to a newspaper headline. It's essentially telling the user and Google what this page is all about. But it's actually coded as an H1 on the page. And I've actually seen in some cases it looks like it's the headline of the page. So maybe this welcome to social school is the most important. It looks like that. That should be the H1. But it's actually coded as a H3 or not coded at all. And it's actually in this example, maybe the who we are is instead coded as the H1. So we really want to make sure that Google's going to look at whatever is actually coded, and it has in the HTML code, it has a little H1 around it. So you might even have to chat with your developer about what is the H1 on the page. That's what Google's looking at. You should only have one H1 per page. You don't want to confuse Google because Google's looking, hey, this is a newspaper headline. It's description of what the page is about. They're going to look at that. So you want to make sure you only really have one headline per page. And you should try to fit the primary keyword as close as possible to the start of the headline. And you don't really have to have a character limit on when it comes to these things. It can be as long as you want, but just bear in mind you want it to be punchy and short and a little description. And it should look good on mobile. It might get, if you add it too long, it might get a little smush. So just put yourself in the user's shoes and work with your designer as well just to make sure it looks good. But again, Google's going to look from and crawl this page and look and see what is coded as an H1 on this page, and it's going to count that towards SEO, an SEO ranking factor for that page. Next thing is URL. This is a little bit less important than what we talked about in terms of the H1, but we are seeing that this is becoming an important ranking signal to Google. So if you can include your primary keyword in the URL, and the URL is no more than 90 characters, you're going to be laughing if you do that. And just I want to show you as an example here, we can see the URL is showing in the SERP, and if it was more than 90 characters, it's going to be cut off there, especially on mobile. So we really want to make sure that our URL is no more than 90 characters, and if possible, it includes our keyword in it. Not the end of the world if you can't fit it in, but if you can, that's going to be amazing, and it's just one more little signal to Google that that's what this page is all about. Next is something called alt tags. So these are hard-coded into the page. You're not going to be able to see them. It's literally coded, but these are used for visually impaired users, which is a hugely important thing across the board now, just making sure that you're compliant with people who are visually impaired or have other disabilities. So because that is such an important thing and just making sure you're compliant with ISO compliance and a whole other range of compliance, Google really does assign value to this. So what it is essentially it's just a description of the image that appears on the page. So in this case, it might be alt tag description might say something like a crowd of people applauding a presentation from the social school. So we could include a little description. Imagine you were describing an image to a friend who has their eyes closed or is visually impaired. That is what you want your alt tag to look like and to read like, because someone's going to use a blind or visually impaired person is going to hover over that image with a reading tool, and it's going to describe the image to them. So if you can fit your keyword in there, ideally you want to keep your descriptions to around 125 to 150 characters, which is about 14 words or so, but there's no hard cutoff. Just imagine how long you would want something to be read to you if you were using something like this and kind of navigating through a site. And you can actually use the Images tab in SEO Meta in one click to see image file names. And just as a brief aside, about how important these are. Beyonce was recently sued because her website did not have alt tags. And she was sued because a visually impaired user would go onto the site and not be able to tell what any of the images were because there was no alt tag description of them. So just make sure that you have these on your site and that they are actually functional and useful to users. And if possible, you include the keyword in them if it makes sense to do so. Another thing that has a small amount of SEO value, but again, we want to make everything as easy as possible for Google to get to, is by using the keyword in your image file name. Now that sounds insane. It's not something that's going to really show up in search results or anything like that, but still just making this change, I've actually seen it kind of take pages. So what I really mean here is, for example, say this image on this page is digitalmarketing.jpg. That's the image, which incidentally would be its own page. All images are hosted as their own page. So in this case, say this JPEG is called that. That's because I've optimized it. Maybe it was previously called Hero Banner 1. Designers often come up with really random names for this, but if we can fit our keyword, in this case we're going after digital marketing, if we can fit that keyword in our image file name, it can be hugely beneficial, and just it's one more little thing that is going to kind of add up and just kind of help the page get momentum in terms of ranking for that keyword. The other thing here too is body copy. Now, I put this at the top of the list, at the bottom of the list, but this is really probably one of the most important things too, from a on-page SEO standpoint. But we really want to use our primary keyword in the body copy if we can. Now, avoid keyword stuffing. We talked about that. If we're going after digital marketing, say for this page, we wouldn't say, we're digital marketing. We love digital marketing. Did we mention we do digital marketing? Hey, guess what? We're digital marketing, and you could be a digital marketing person too. We don't want to do that. That just sounds spammy, because remember, we're writing for users, not search engines. So use your primary keyword where it makes sense to do so. So if you can fit it in there naturally and make it sound good without destroying anything, that's going to be the best result. If a user thinks this sounds kind of weirdly worded for some reason, almost certainly Google is going to come to that same conclusion as well. So write and use your keyword where it makes sense to do so, and try to avoid keyword stuffing. And we'll chat a little bit more about how to check to make sure you've done this properly and done a great job. There's actually tools that we can use. So you should also consider using secondary keywords. So maybe while you're doing your keyword research, you found some other juicy words. They're somewhat related. There's not as much search around them. Maybe instead you write a section of copy around that. You write some new content within your primary piece of content around that. So it's one paragraph about that. So you would use those secondary keywords in H2s and H3. So those are just like we have one H1. We might have multiple H2s and H3s on a page to kind of break those up into subsections. And you might also use it within your body copy as well. So that's just going to help build authority. So Google's going to understand, oh, okay, they're talking about this topic. Remember, AI, Google's AI, RankBrain, can understand content at really deep levels. So if it sees similar terms to your primary one, that are related topics around that, related keywords, that can also help with your authority as well, and just help the page rank even better. So you might use it, say for this particular page, this is tagged as an H2. Maybe you fit your keyword in there. Maybe there's even H3s on the page as kind of sub headings. You just throw that on there, and that's going to help Google understand the content. And also just fitting that keyword in the body copy, we would just try to fit those secondary terms. Maybe we were trying to rank for Launch Labs is related to digital marketing. It's sort of somewhat similar. So we're trying to go for that keyword and add that as a secondary term just to really reinforce the importance of that topic to Google. We're still really focused on the primary keyword of digital marketing, but we just saw that as another good opportunity that we can fit that secondary keyword in. Again, where it makes sense to do so and without just randomly repeating the keyword and without any kind of context or decent flow. So, we've done some research, we've added our keyword to our page title, our URL, we've added to our meta description, our H1, our alt tags, our image file names, and within the body copy itself. And then we've added some secondary keywords to our H2s, H3s, we've added it within the body copy. How do we know we've actually done this effectively? Well, the good news is there are a couple of tools that can actually help. So the first one is if you're using WordPress, which is obviously a hugely popular CMS now, there's a ton of sites doing that use WordPress. There's actually a free WordPress plugin called Yoast that you can use that's going to grade that for you. And also, if you have a Moz subscription, so that is a paid tool, one of the keyword research tools we use, it also has a on-page grader. You can actually get a 1-month trial version of Moz too if you want to give it a go, which is pretty awesome, so you might want to give that a shot as well. But it has an on-page grader that will actually look at your page and give you some insights. So this is what the Yoast WordPress plugin looks like. So you'll see in this first section here, if I were to click the Edit Snippet button, I can actually write a new page title and meta description here. If I don't, it will show me what the default is that's being pulled in. I can also enter a focus keyword. Now this isn't going to be pulled into anything, it's just a way for the tool to grade what I'm going after. So I would enter my primary keyword in there that I'm trying to optimize for, and it's going to go and look through all the different components. And you'll see at the bottom there it has a section that says problems. It's going to talk about all of the different issues with that particular elements on page and what I can do to fix them. So it'll say, you have to add it to the first paragraph. Its keyword density is too low. It's not used as much time. It should be used in the meta description. It's going to flag all the different things. And then you'll note that there's actually a little Y at the very top of this page and you can kind of see it there with an orange circle around it up at the very top navigation next to View Page. And that different little dot will change different colors. It'll turn green if it's really happy with your page and it thinks that you're doing a great job of optimizing for that particular keyword, and it'll be red if it thinks that there's a lot of problems, and it'll be sort of orangish if it thinks that it's not that great. There's still a little bit of work you can do, but it's not bad either. So you really want to hit that green part, but this is going to do all that work for you. You've got your keyword, and assuming it's a good one, Yoast isn't going to tell you that. It's just going to say, yes, you're either doing a good job of going after this particular term, but it's going to give you some actionable insights that you can use to fix any problems that you might have with that particular, all the SEO components on that page. And then here's what the Moz on-page grader looks like as well. So you can enter your primary keyword and your URL, and it is going to grade that for you. So it's going to tell you the number of times the keyword was found. It's going to give you a page score out of 100 that really tells you how well you're doing for this page, and it's going to tell you the 22 factors that help your page, and in this case, there's 5 factors that are hurting this page when we're trying to go for this particular term. So we can use this tool. It also kind of helps us understand what's important from an SEO standpoint. But if you do use the Moz on-page grader, and again, you can try the free version for a month. It's got everything in it. I would highly recommend doing that as well. You can use this tool and start to kind of get a sense of what's important from an SEO standpoint and just make sure you're doing it correctly. And it's also interesting to note with both these tools, in some cases, it's little things that can make a big result. I've literally seen it be a case where I used a keyword 2 times too many, and it was saying, hey, this is like a 60% page score, and then I just removed those 2 instances, and all of a sudden I'm up to like a 95%. So just follow these guidelines. These are both really great tools. There's a whole bunch of other ones out there that will also give you some insights, but really recommend both of these two as a way to kind of grade your pages and just see how you're doing. All right, next just wanted to talk a little bit about keyword mapping. So keyword mapping is really all about taking the keyword research that we've done and just mapping them to specific pages. So the best way to think about keyword research is you're just kind of casting a wide net. You've come up with all these keywords. You're sort of sifting through them. It's almost like panning for gold to try to find those nuggets, those golden nugget keywords that you can use and to optimize pages. But then you got to figure out, well, which page should I use this keyword for? And the best way to do that is with a keyword map. It's the easiest way to optimize a page, but it's also a good document just to have for your own records. So you can reference it later, and you'll know what specific keyword you're trying to optimize a page for. So this often happens if somebody wants to know, hey, what keyword are we actually optimizing for? If you've been working on dozens of pages, you might not remember off the top of your head, so you can just look at this document, and it's going to give a nice little snapshot of what's happening there. So for this exercise, would just like you to open the Excel file that should be included with your course package, and it's going to be called the Social School Digital Marketing Course 2 SEO Worksheets. Just open that Excel file, and you'll see here that it has all these different associated elements with it. So we can add our page name. That's just going to be for references only, but we can put our primary keyword, our secondary keywords. We can include our URL, and I've added custom links to this spreadsheet that are actually going to tell you how many characters a particular element is. It's going to have your page title, your meta description, all of the good SEO elements that we really want to optimize that for that primary keyword and secondary keywords if possible. And also you'll note that in this spreadsheet at the very bottom there is an images tab that you can use to optimize your image alt tags and your image file names as well. So you can do that as well if you want to, maybe for your primary homepage, you can list out all the images that are associated with that and take that to your developers or your designers and just make sure that they're optimizing those. And they might be like, is this really worth it? And again, it is a small thing to do, but all of these little things add up, and just giving Google as much information as you can make a huge difference. So recommend you just taking a few minutes now, or even probably like a good amount of time once you've got your keyword down, to really map out those keywords to the 5 most important pages on your website and really figure out what you want to rank for and use this keyword map to help you do that. So let's take a few moments to do that, and then I will see you guys when it comes to module number 4.